Radio, welcome viewers to Awaken Your Highest Self. Today we've got the lovely Will Franklin here, and he is
Franken,
Franken.
Franken, yeah, as in Stein without the Stein.
Will Franken, who is a comedian, creator, actor, director, man of many talents, I think. Is that a fair summary of your skill base, is it?
I'd like to be a polymath, but I don't know if I can claim that. But yeah, I'm playing keyboards in a band, writing, other stuff,
Mm.
trying to graft. Is that the word? Trying
Mm.
to graft? I'm grafting. I'm trying to get some money, basically. That's
Well, my introduction to other people, if they don't already know you, is that I've been following some of your stand-up comedy sketches that I've seen online for many years. I think you're a very clever,
thank you.
intelligent thinker with using satire and humor to make people laugh in a very deep, sort of thoughtful way, with a great spectrum of characters and an amazing analysis for what's going on in the world, I find as well. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
so recently, you've created something, a creation called Baby Reindeer Part Two, and that brought you even more to my attention. And I got in touch, and I thought it'd be really cool to have an interview to find out more because I think even though I don't own a television and I don't watch particular streaming channels, of which one of them is the subject matter of your latest
Yeah.
creation. But I was very impressed when I was listening back on, wow, there's so much depth to this. It's a real creative piece of depth, and yeah, it really blew me away. I mean, it's got a bit of darkness to it because there's a dark subject matter that it's doing a satire on. So it's not for the weak world or but it's for the strong of stomach. But yeah, definitely it's something rich for people to consider going to watch, and it's on Will's YouTube channel. So I'll put a link down below, and I'll also
Great.
put a link to some of his great sketches that I would highly recommend you go and watch because I've had many a smiling time laughing away at some of your work. So thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
And how are you doing today then, Will?
I'm okay. I have band rehearsal. I joined the covers band a couple weeks ago, and I'm having a particular problem with this Erasure song called "A Little Respect." I don't know if you know
Okay.
the song.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. So I haven't played keyboards in a band for quite some time, but it's a little side project I got going, and that's basically it. They're coming to get me, and we got a gig on Friday, and so today I'm just thinking about dun 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 dun, 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 this horrible synthesizer madness. I got to commit to that. But I got a couple other comedy ideas on the go, and might have another. I put out another smaller video not too long ago about the blandness of yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. That was great as well. I was very impressed by that. You've got a great way of using satire to make points about the ridiculousness of what's maybe going on in mainstream culture at the moment. And so yeah, you've created this epic piece called Baby Reindeer Part Two,
Yeah.
which is available on YouTube and people can watch in its entirety. So I think it would be lovely to maybe if you could tell the viewers how this creation of yours came about and into existence.
Well, I don't watch modern stuff generally, but I have social media, but I never really use it. And so I was on Facebook one day and I saw somebody that I knew from Los Angeles commenting about Baby Reindeer, and then you kind of hear about it was a Netflix series, and a lot of people were enthusing about how honest and brave it was. And I'm a big enemy of this honesty and bravery trend, especially in stand-up comedy, because it's become over the years less about the comedy, less about satire, and more about this is me, this is my own personal struggle, and here's my trauma. And I peripherally know the guy that was involved in this series. And anyway, I saw one episode. I said, this is the kind of trash that they put out now, this kind of cheap sensationalist muck masquerading as psychoanalytic truth. And then I left it alone. And then February, there was this. I don't know if you know the author Anthony Burgess, but there was a arts review contest where they wanted you to review something from the previous year. So I said, I'll watch the whole series and I'll review it. And I actually got shortlisted, which is frames the beginning of that album. And watching the whole series, I had that I need the anger, right? So I got really angry at what I was seeing and the cheap exploitation and the hypocrisy, double standard. A lot of it was class based too. I think there's a lot of middle class comedy now that is desperate for something to be wrong with them. So they can't go through the class thing like I'm poor, I don't have enough money for rent or food. So they kind of invent this trauma, and it's very circumlocutory. Like I can't even get into the specifics, but basically this guy was just milking trauma, and somehow it got classified as a dark comedy or what's called a feel bad comedy now. It won all sorts of awards, Emmys, Golden Globes, and all of that. And I had a real fun time making it because I have to be angry in order to make something usually. And um, in my free time, I will sit down and I'll watch old movies, classic cinema. I'll read classic literature, and that's really good. But I don't have anything to make fun of. And every now and then I'll resurface and I'll see what's going on in the present age and say, and a comedy album will just write itself. So I had a lot of time with that. I had a lot of fun with that, and maybe it took about a month and a half, 2 months, something like that to get it done. But I was glad not. You've mentioned this, and I think a few other people commented that they hadn't actually seen the show,
Yeah,
or even in your case, own a TV or
yeah,
Netflix or whatever. And I was really glad because halfway through, I thought, will this work for people who haven't even seen it or even know what I'm talking about? And I think that there's a general. I think I captured the general feeling of like this kind of milking trauma insincerely,
mm,
careerism, kind of a blind careerism that's propelling the world right now. Kind of a shameful. I mean, capitalism at its absolute lowest. Like purchase comments for your YouTube, or out living under an avatar, or And I think the guy behind the show, is kind of the one of the poster boys for this. Yeah, I'm screwed up, but that's just the story of the human race, and I don't buy that. I think there's good people in the world, bad people in the world, people right in the middle, and I
mm,
think I think networks are kind of in Hollywood now are kind of selling us on this pseudo pantheism. It doesn't have the intelligence of a Spinoza, but it's kind of this. Well, I guess you'd call it an algorithmic. It's where the algorithm's leading us, as if that somehow
mm.
conveys truth or whatever. And I think the guy behind the series uh, really emulated that, and I wanted to mock it, and it felt good to mock something again because I hadn't made a comedy album for I think close to a year, so it was nice to be back in business.
Yeah, and I think it's very powerful to use your humor is very clever in that you take things that are happening, twist them, bring it
Mm.
back pretty much as it is, but with maybe a little bit. But I think it's a very clever way to get people thinking is to use
Yeah,
humor to twist things and to
yeah,
shine a light back on them, but show the absurdity of certain things. And I think yeah, very much so. I think it was very powerful on an auditory level because the majority of it is audio. So I was actually
yeah.
listening to it in the car, so I didn't really see much of the
Oh,
video clips initially, and so it was
yeah,
really an auditory experience. And I found the way that there's so many little narratives going on throughout. You make some amazing commentaries about AI technology, and
yeah,
I think when you're using humor it starts to. There's certainly a few times I was laughing out loud, and then there was a few other times I'm feeling mentally stimulated by what you're doing and the observations you're making. And there's like any great art, there's some moments where I'm going, oh, that. There was one particular episode that was a particular moment which is pretty full on, which I wouldn't do like a spoiler, but
yeah,
yeah, one bit where I was like going, oh, I'm not sure I can get through this, but then I was thinking actually. I'll get through this because you've got an artistic intention to and reason for doing this particular sequence, and it was quite powerful actually to sort of get through that scene and kind of go, yeah, actually, I see why you were kind of like you had that intention,
yeah.
and so yeah, I was sort of like fascinated, I suppose, as a somebody who's watched some of your clips. You've got some great ones online that were from um, Comedy Unleashed, and some other stuff about sort of climate change or gender politics, and some of the stuff that you've done, I think, is just so relevant now. I mean, it really hasn't dated, and it's really fantastic what you put out there. How long did it take you to kind of create the piece? Was it like, did it come to you in a big sort of download of what you thought the content was, or were you piecing it together for a while, or?
I tend to write as I record.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
Yeah, so I forget. I mean, I just had this. I don't know what you know what it was. I was writing this essay because the Burgess competition, they wanted 800 words, so I had about a 3,000 word rough draft.
Right.
But the entries had to be 800 words, and I had all of these leftover ways of attacking this
Yeah.
series
Yeah.
that just kind of got recycled into a comedy album. And I knew I wanted to hit the bullet points, but I'm not exactly sure. Because usually, yeah, I write as I edit, and
Okay.
or edit as I write. So I might end the day's work on a sound effect or a scene, and then get up the next day and just talk it out. So I'm probably only always thinking maybe 2 or 3 minutes of audio ahead of what came
Oh,
before. And
okay.
then I think one night I was in the bathtub and I just thought, no, it's going to go that. Then he's going to come out there, and it's going to lead to this. And then I had this idea for this. There's a wonderful song that closes it out from this punk thing, which I don't know why is not better known, but this, if you heard the ending credits, it's just filled
Yeah.
with profanity, and I thought that just sums up everything that I think is wrong with the world right now. The
Right.
right, the left. I mean, I think I got to say this about. I have to mention Comedy Unleashed, and I know you said maybe tried to, but see, negativity is my currency, and I think the
Okay.
reason so much bad comedy is because there's no negativity. You have people who are insincere careerists that kind of shake the hands until they got all the way to the BBC or whatever, and Comedy Unleashed is as I found out, much to my chagrin, was a kind of a political think tank.
Mm.
Um, they ended up kind of morphing into GB News.
Mm.
And I find it weird after, we're living through the age of AI. We had this government shutdown in 2020, and you come out the other end of that, and you see these people still playing this game of the culture war. This the what they call the woke anti-woke dance is still going on,
Mm.
and so the stuff I'm making now is just trying to how do you convince people that have been um, years and years of social media cleaving people apart and reducing the emotions to just stupid yellow-faced emojis, and who are thinking that they're fighting some political revolution because they tweet this about Trump or that against Trump or whatever. How do you convince them that the big problems are much bigger than this? The gender issue, for example, is it's something that a lot of comedians they'll reach for now as a kind of a cheap joke. It's like a man's dressed as a woman, therefore this is funny, and then some of them might get quote unquote canceled, and they'll make themselves into pseudo martyrs, and then the other side will play up about how we're the wonderful nice people, and both are missing the point. And then the point in my from where I'm looking at is that there's nothing funny. And there's nothing funny because people aren't going after the unseen things like why is everybody looking at their hands now and scrolling and have we what are we like the fact that nobody's saying AI is an immoral thing, the term artificial intelligence, everything about it, it's not if we use AI correctly or if we use it responsibly. That's not the question at all. It's like the atom bomb. There's no moral way to use an atom bomb, and it's the same thing with artificial intelligence. It's the big lie that's promoting this idea that we're not self-sufficient as individual human beings. And the fact that so many people are, either accepting it blindly or just saying, well, use it cheekily or don't take it too seriously, or whatever. And these are the issues I think that, if we could all get on board as the human race and, instead of, I said this, I got canceled. And
Mm.
am I making sense? Am I being
Oh,
too,
no, absolutely. Yeah, total sense. Yeah, I mean, I think if it's artificial, it's not intelligent, is how I would kind of view it. But I'm certain I've read that somewhere, and that sort of resonated with me. But I think you're right. Yeah, I think uh, comedy has been set hugely under attack because it's one of the ways that you can kind of culturally control the barriers of the discussion, so to speak. And that's why I find your comedy very refreshing to look at it and
Thank you.
you're a brave creator, you're bold, and yeah, so, yeah, there's a bit of swagger and energy, and maybe that's me picking up on your anger and how you're feeling and using your anger creatively. But I mean, creativity and art is like a really powerful medium, isn't it? And a lot of mainstream manifestations of that have kind of perhaps got a bit diluted or corrupted, and they're a pale shade of perhaps what they might have been in the past. So what I thought would be quite interesting is to find out, is there particular artworks or movies or comedians or satirists
Yeah.
that inspired you back in the day that kind of were like your original reference point?
Yeah, you mentioned in your email, like, when did I get first introduced to satire? And it
Yeah.
was through Jonathan Swift.
Okay.
And he has, are you familiar with The Modest Proposal?
I'm not familiar with Jonathan Swift.
He wrote a very sarcastic essay I should know the date. I want to say 1727.
Okay.
And it was a sarcastic response to the English treatment of the Irish.
Okay.
And in it, he adopts the tone of a well-to-do English gentleman that has studied the Irish problem of poverty, and he suggests that he has been assured by a very knowing American acquaintance of his in London that a child freshly boiled will make the most lovely stew, fricassee, or ragout. And so he goes through, I think it's 11 pages of describing recipes for how the Irish can cook their own children. And it's nasty
Okay.
and it's filled with that beautiful thing that is so that comedy from whatever it's going under, whether it's the free speech anti-woke comedy, whether it's the safe cardigan panel show comedy is lacking, which is anger. Here is a man who is utterly livid about the impoverished conditions of the Irish. And I was very fortunate to go to a small school out in the sticks in Missouri when I was growing up. And I had these teachers who would, probably at the age of 14, they're giving us, like, I want you to read Modest Proposal. Now, what is Jonathan Swift doing here? And I had my mind blown. I thought that is such an amazing way to get back at your enemies.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be the ugly person that you are, in this case, the English system. I'm
Mm.
going to be that right in that tone and really highlight what cruel scumbags you people are,
Yeah.
and to highlight what is the best way to cure the starvation problem in Ireland. You recommend as and the character he's playing is I'm just an objective scientist. I've studied the problem. I'm a bit of an economist here, and I think I can solve this problem. And he does it all with this insanely beautiful straight face. He sustains the irony throughout, and it blew my mind as a kid. And then from there you get to Mark Twain and Pope, and so it's mostly literature for me. And then as far as performative, it was Monty Python,
Mm.
but the structure of Python. The flying circus episodes, how one idea never really ended in a punchline, it just dovetailed into another for
Wow.
the 30 minutes. And I found that blew my mind. And then later, when I discovered James Joyce, I saw here was a man who did it before in literature. Um, there's all sorts of stuff. I mean, Airplane as a kid. So
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes the little bit of lowbrow sight gags, maybe here
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there,
Mm-hmm.
but the big ones for me, like probably Swift and Python. Peter Cook, definitely his ability to improv surrealism, do it
Yeah.
all off the cuff and have it just hit every time. And as far as contemporaries, like I say, I rarely watch anything contemporary, but when I do, it ends up usually getting filtered into something
Mm.
satirical. So maybe I should make a more concerted effort to watch. I mean, I've made so many people angry in this field over the years that they've done what collectives have historically done, which is to make sure that if anybody is doing anything to insult you, make sure that they never work again. And one of the best examples of that, most recent, was the Comedy Unleashed night, which has billed itself as a free speech night. Free speech, and if you've been canceled, come here. And I was kind of their house comedian for quite some time. And then I found out who was running them and funding them. And one night they had a former education secretary, Toby Young, was in the audience. And I took the opportunity to mock him in front of him with everybody there. And they scrubbed all of my videos, including the Greta Thunberg clip, off their channels And just but that's what collectives do, because they have a collective lie that they're the free speech place. And so as
Yeah.
a result of being kind of in exile, and not gigging as much, I've retreated into literature again. And because I used to be a literature professor, so I've kind of retreated into that. But when you do that, when you live in that wonderful land where everybody writes beautifully and cinema is perfect and there's Ingmar Bergman films, you don't get to satirize as much. But
Yeah.
when you're out there in the world and you see how the world is in the present, it's there's plenty to satirize.
Yeah.
And I disagree with people who say things that it's fashionable to say, "Oh, we're so beyond satire." I don't think that's true. I think that people just don't touch certain things. For example, if you don't really believe 100% in the climate change thing, or the Ukraine war, or what you call it, the COVID regulations, you're put into this camp. You just say, well, you believe this, therefore you believe all this, and you're thrown here. Or if you go from the other side, you don't particularly care if a man uses a lady's toilet, then you're put into that camp. And I think that's because the world and collectives are generally flummoxed with what to do with an individual. But I think an individual satirist, there is plenty to satirize. It's just people aren't touching it. If I go up and say that I'm anti-AI, that's like, oh, you must be some hillbilly who lives in a log cabin with a shotgun and a Confederate flag,
Yeah.
because that's the sort of reductive level of political thought and intelligence we have now, largely thanks to the internet. And people giving pictures of yellow thumbs and
Yeah.
laughing faces with tears coming out. I mean, that's I don't
Yeah.
know.
And I guess from a reduction consciousness point of view or a maximization point of view, I can see some of the stuff that you're commenting that was within Baby Reindeer is both uh, bringing people's vibration down. It's fear based, it's kind of trauma based, and it's kind of like, and yeah, it's a reduction piece. Whereas like you're kind of like showing that you've got this depth of insight that you want people to think about and consider, and you're using humor to sort of stimulate those brain pathways if they've still got those available to them. I was very struck by when you were chatting about the Mr. Swift and that kind of letter, the way that you were
Yeah.
talking about um, people of a particular status talking down at people and
Yeah.
saying just do this. There's almost like there's parallels with that in the last 5, 10 years of just people in the media just saying you've got to do this thing, and they're able to keep a poker face.
Yeah.
They're not joking, or they're trying to see if you it's an intelligence test whether you'll be able to see behind their eyes and ears and their talk whether they're actually genuine people that kind of care for the planet or not. It's a curious time, isn't it? Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, one of the things I did during the lockdown was I saved a tree. I mean, that sounds grandiose, but I mean, basically, I see in America we don't have councils like we do like in Britain,
Okay.
and I didn't. So they were chopping down trees left and right and massacring nature and building. This was all during this pandemic, and they wanted to go after this tree next to me, and I wrote this impassioned screed about the destruction of nature, and it's still there. And I felt really good about that because I like tangibly seeing
Yeah.
when nature is being protected.
Yeah.
But when
Nice.
when people like Boris Johnson get involved and talk about a Green New Deal, I just do not understand why people don't see this as the moment politicians and especially Tories get involved with something like nature, you actually think that they're going to do anything about this? This is but there's a credulity to people.
Mm.
And saying that though, there's something in me that's still, I wouldn't say optimistic, but the positive thing in me, I think, because we're talking about positivity and negativity, is that I must still believe that things can be changed,
Yeah.
or I wouldn't do it.
Of course.
Or even if there's a fraction of people out there who get it, or feel less alone because they're feeling mad, like I must be losing my mind because the world is they're talking to Alexa, or
Mm.
you know I don't even know how to make fun of that right now. I'm learning about these large language models and stuff like that. Or they're saying, "Draw me an album cover."
Mm.
I must still believe that there's something in the human race that can be saved somehow, despite the best efforts of the Nimrods that run this world to put blinders on people and say, no, this is all you can do. You're just a single cell amoeba that
Mm.
has to follow blindly to this path. It's you say it's lowering the vibrations, and maybe that's one way of putting it. I call it banking on this idea that people are stupid. And I think one thing that I never did, I never assumed that my audiences were stupid. No matter where I was playing, I would go out with what I might be nervous. I might look at a venue and say, there's no way in hell my stuff is going to go over here tonight. And then many times I've been pleasantly surprised, but I think there's a lot of performers that assume, the worst of their audiences. This is all they can. In fact, I've been told by promoters like my audiences cannot handle this stuff. So
Right.
it's the gatekeepers, the BBCs and the local bookers that determine my audiences are thick, and that's the way we like them.
Yeah, yeah,
And sometimes it's worked against me. I will assume that people still care, or that enough people still care. Not everybody's apathetic, cowardly, or stupid.
yeah,
I think that humans, we have a self-sufficiency in us. And if you look back at the history of marketing, it's been nothing but one big tale of you're not enough,
yeah.
you have to have these shoes, you have to have this television show, and now guess what, you have to have this new type of intelligence.
Mm.
And I don't know, it makes me sad that people are that credulous and they don't fight back. And
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know
it's an interesting time sometimes when you see people who are intelligent engaging with those AI technologies, I think. And I think
Sure.
I perceive it that, frankly, more often than not, they're just being lazy
Mm,
and
yeah,
they don't want to put the work in. And
yeah,
therefore, whereas with yourself, you're putting the work in, you're creating something and you're making something new in the world, you're putting energy out there, it's kind of being stored into the ether by the very energy of the power of the word.
yeah,
And I think those are the magical things about being human. And I think a lot of, yeah, like you say, there's a lot of reduction in this kind of stuff. People are just looking for the easy option, the lazy option, or they're just going along with the crowd because they're being told everyone else is using it. So why I don't want to get left out. It's a bit like when humans started using mobile phones or all those other changes
yeah.
in society. It's quite similar, isn't it?
It's been a war of attrition.
Mm.
um, because I remember when the iPhone I didn't have an iPhone, and somebody else I knew had an iPhone. They showed it to me, and I said, I just kind of shrugged my shoulders, and I thought, this is, he must like video games. I never liked video games, so he must like being able to rub his hand on a device and it tells you the weather, whatever. And then bit by bit, you found that, okay, if you want to look for a job, or if you want to know about the gigs, you have to get on Facebook. And all of my social media platforms, which aren't many, it's just Facebook and Instagram, were made for me by other people. And before you know it, you're kind of living in this, it's a war of attrition that this kind of technocracy is enacted upon people, right? You want to pay your bills, you got to do it online. Most places are not even, like, I don't even have a bank in this town. They always ask me to download an app. So they've been reshaping the world into something that is really safe, hygienic, and overwhelmingly chrome and stupid.
Mm.
And what do you do? I mean, that's why I like books. I like reading an old book. I like the tactile sensation of
Yeah.
even speaking on Zoom really freaks me out, because it's like, am I doing this right? Is this supposed to click here or whatever? And I like to think that was a healthy way to be in reaction to it. But I think that I don't know. I think the positivity, and what positivity I have is in this, because at the moment I believe nothing can be done, then I won't make anything anymore. But it does seem like a very, very difficult time because of the rhetoric shift too. When the atom bomb was invented, a lot of people were rightly freaked out, like, oh my God, we got the ability to destroy the world tens and hundreds of times over. And then very quickly it became a discussion about, well, we need to have the American atom bomb and not the Russian atom bomb.
Mm.
And it became kind of parceled out. And I've seen this happen with AI. That once upon a time we would have said artificial intelligence, my God, that's horrible, what a concept. And now it has quickly morphed into, well, as long as you use it responsibly.
Mm.
And it's a dialogue that's mostly being done by the politicians top down to get everybody to follow along. So I don't know.
It's just a little game to is the Hegelian dialect, isn't it? In action,
Yeah,
problem, reaction, solution. I think it's a little bit like the weapons of mass destruction that they
that's
were
right.
looking for in the Gulf War, and
Yeah,
just all the furor that was managing to play people through these things to see if they can raise the vibration down enough to just go, well, we're just going to do this anyway, I think.
yeah, yeah.
But I think
That's what I say about if I'm a politician, uh, a technocrat. Uh, what they like a stupid audience. They need a stupid audience. So they need an overwhelming majority of people to be stupid, collective, not thinking for themselves, and terribly apathetic. Whereas a real artist, an individual artist will come out and assume the exact opposite. I assume you guys are smarter than you let on. I assume you guys are not apathetic, that you still care about things. I think that might be what morally separates art from political blather. The politicians need us to be not self-sufficient. We need help. We need government interference. One of the things that really makes me upset about it, because I would love to see a left wing that was more like Abbie Hoffman, where they, burn down the system, man, and let's get some anarchy happening here. I would love that. But we can't have that now because so many times you'll see like left-wing activists actually ask the government, we need the government to do more. So why would you ask these guys? These are the scumbags who gave you the atom bomb and everything else that's miserable in the world. The stock market crash, the government gave you that. What the government gives you this, and how can you really be an activist if you're going to say more and more? And I think the terms left and right have been so morphed and polluted that it's become like it's just this really childish game people play out on X and Facebook about, I'm going to say this, no, you can't say that.
But I mean, that kind of idea of there just being only two options is a clever kind of trick, isn't it? Really, to just
Yeah,
to say you're either over there or you're over there, and then not recognize there's plenty more of the picture. But it's quite a clever sort of a trick to just propose that there's only two options and you've got to choose one of them. But
yeah.
uh,
Sad,
yeah, indeed.
sad, really.
Yeah, so I think I'm minded to think we're about 2 minutes from the end of the video, so I think if we kind of maybe wound up here, we could jump back on and further discuss some of the things that we've talked about after a
Yeah.
little break. Is that okay with you?
Oh yeah. What is there a new password or something I got to put
No,
in?
no,
Or
the same one. Yeah,
okay, just click the same link that you sent me the email.
yeah, yeah, indeed, yeah.
Cool, man.
All right, catch you in a while.
In a bit.
Thanks, Will. Cheers.